My name is Emma. I was a simple girl from a small town. When I was a child, I always wanted to learn English. But I didn't have a good English class in my town. My school was very small. The English teacher only taught some grammar. I could not speak English. I could not understand stories in English. I was very sad. One day, my friend said, "Emma, you can learn English through stories." At first, I didn't believe her. I said, "Stories? Really?" She smiled and gave me a book. The title was Simple English Story for Beginners. That day changed my life. I started reading that English story. It was about a girl who travels the world. The sentences were easy. The story had English subtitles and audio too. I listened to the story again and again. I read the English short story many times. I started to understand the words. I started to feel something inside my heart. It was like magic. It was an emotional English story. I was crying at the end of the story. Every night, I read another English story. Sometimes I watched videos with English subtitles. Sometimes I listened to English audiobooks. I didn't know I was learning. But my English was getting better. I started to learn English through stories, not boring grammar. Then I found a channel called Learn English Through Story. The speaker told simple stories. The stories were about life, about love, about sadness. These were real-life stories. I felt like they were my own stories. I watched a video called A1 A2 English Story with subtitles. It was about a poor girl who found hope. I watched it many times. That was my English listening practice. That was my English speaking practice too. I repeated the sentences. I copied the speaker. Slowly, I became better. One day, I started writing my own story. A story about my life. A story in English. It was hard, but I used the same words I learned from those English stories. I used simple grammar, short sentences, and strong feelings. I wrote about my mother, my childhood, and my dream to travel. And then, something amazing happened. I shared my story on an English learning website. Many people read it. Some cried. Some said it helped them. Some said, "Emma, your story is very emotional. It's a beautiful English story." I was so happy. Then I started my own YouTube channel. I called it English Story for Beginners. I told stories in English, very slowly, with subtitles. I helped other people learn, just like I did. People said, "Emma, we learn English through your stories." They called my videos Real-Life English and English Listening Practice. Now, I live in another country. I speak English every day. I read books, listen to podcasts, and help people learn. But I never forget how it all started. It started with one simple sentence. You can learn English through stories. So now, if you are reading this, and if you are just a beginner, don't worry. Don't stop. Read simple English stories. Watch stories with subtitles. Listen to audiobooks. Do English listening and speaking practice. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to keep going. This is my English story. And maybe, your story starts today. Every night, before going to sleep, I listened to an English story. It was my daily routine. I found a YouTube channel that shared many simple English stories. The girl in the story always had challenges. I could feel her pain. And slowly, as I listened again and again, I noticed something strange. I was understanding more words. This wasn't just English listening practice anymore, it became my comfort. One evening, while watching a real-life English story about a lost puppy, I began to cry. I didn't expect it to be such an emotional English story. But it was. It touched my heart deeply. I replayed that English audiobook 4 times that night. In the morning, I looked in the mirror and said, I want to be like that girl. I want to speak like her. So, I watched English stories with subtitles. I paused. I repeated. I spoke along. Sometimes I would write down the story with subtitles. It helped me so much. The vocabulary. The structure. The feelings. I wasn't just reading, I was learning English. I started telling my own stories too. I called them English short stories for beginners. My first story was about a butterfly. It was simple. But it had emotion. That's when I realized, storytelling was my way to practice English speaking. Each English short story I wrote became better. I used more feelings, more real-life experiences. They were always at an A1, A2 English level, so even beginners like me could enjoy them. One time, I wrote a love story in English. It wasn't perfect. But it was true. It had regret. It had hope. That's what made it powerful. That's when someone commented, "Your storytelling made me cry." I'm also learning English through stories. That comment changed me. I created more stories. Some about school, some about friendship, some about loneliness. I listened to my own stories as English audiobooks while walking. And each time, I said to myself, this is not just a story. This is my English class. No teacher. No books. Just me and the English story. Now, when people ask me how I learned English, I say, I listened. I read. I wrote. I cried. I dreamed, all through stories. The girl in my stories is me. And now I share my English story for beginners with the world, so other girls like me can believe, learning English is easy, if you feel it. If you live it. If you listen to it like it's your own life. So I keep going. I write more. I speak more. I help others. Because I know how it feels to be lost in translation, and how powerful it is when one simple story helps you finally understand. And that's how I truly learned English, through story. One day, I found a new English story on the internet. It was called A1, A2 English Story about friendship and hope. I watched the video with English subtitles and listened to the English audiobook. The story was about 2 friends who helped each other. It was a simple story, but very emotional. I felt happy and sad at the same time. This made me want to learn more. I started to write my own stories about friendship. I wrote about my real friends and the fun times we had. I made new sentences using the words I learned from my English listening practice. Every day, I read my stories out loud to practice my English speaking practice. Sometimes I shared my stories on social media. People from different countries read them. They told me my stories were good for English learning and learning English in a fun way. This made me feel proud and gave me more energy to keep going. When I was sad or lonely, I listened to emotional English stories. Those stories helped me feel better. They gave me hope and strength. I realized that stories are not just for learning words, but also for learning about life. After many months, my English became better. I could understand movies and songs. I could talk with people from other countries. I felt happy and confident. All because I learned English through simple English stories and English audiobooks. Now, I want to help other beginners like me. I want to tell them that learning English can be easy and fun. You don't need to study boring grammar books. Just listen, read, and enjoy English stories with subtitles. This is the best way to learn. This is my story of learning English. A story of hope, friendship, and love. I believe that if you keep trying, you can learn English too. Just like me.